Welcome to Media Literacy 2. These are the flipped activities for week 4. This week I would like to add and say that practicing critical thinking teaches you that it is usually impossible to be perfectly certain about news events. And this is not from me, this is from A. Hudson Osozaki, I'm not sure of the pronunciation. But it is not possible to be perfectly certain, but I do believe it is possible to be well informed, and this requires to analyze what you read or watch. And yes, being well informed for me is a necessary skill for the 21st century, and Bornstein and Davis 2010 agree with me by saying that the main role of the press should be to help us lead good lives and improve society. These two goals are major for me. Here is the example I will use. So it is an article, and that gives you an idea about how long it has to be minimum. The other important information you need to give about your news item is the newspaper or the news source name, so where does it come from? In my situation, it comes from the Japan News. Then we will need the date of publication. In my case, it was May 27th, 2015. And obviously, title would be very nice. I just know that sometimes, especially if it's a video, you don't really have an official title. If you don't have an official title, well, come up with the best yourself. So invent it. And then last but not least, the byline. So this is the line in an article that gives you the name of the writer. In my case, it is a writer, it is a person. But it could also be anonymous, so that means you don't have the information. Or it could be a news agency such as AP, Reuters, AFP, GG Press, Kyoto News. So please make sure to provide these very important pieces of information. Again, analyzing your article will happen in class. I just want you to show you what you will be doing. So you will be using this type of table to analyze, and the first thing I recommend you to do is to actually number each paragraph. So I will do that on the next slide. And also, please pay attention in the explanations when you have this symbol, finger pointing. It means that you should probably answer in the table here in your analysis, right? Those are questions to help you analyze your article. So let's get started with numbering. Before we get into the details of my article, I would like to explain to you this part of the table which says objective, subjective, why. So objective or subjective, what you need to think about is how are the pieces of information presented. Is it in an objective or subjective way? And then try to explain your position. So that's what you need to be writing in the table. Now, what does objective mean? What does subjective mean? So think of objective as something real, something that actually happened in the world so that you can show it to people, or another way of looking at it, people can see it. So something objective is usually not influenced by the journalist's emotions or his or her positive or negative opinions and self-interest, whether the journalist is trying to promote himself or herself or promote something that he or she strongly believes in, right? So this is not happening. Synonyms for objective could be fair, just, equitable, impartial, unbiased. On the other hand, subjective means something the journalist thinks, right? So it might not be actually taking place in the world, or it might be hard for someone to see it, right? So it might be more of an opinion, a perspective on a certain topic. So in this case, the journalist usually writes based on his or her personal experience, understanding, and feelings. So yes, a good synonym would be personal or individual. Now, let's look at the goat article. In the first paragraph, we have two types of information, what and why. And this indeed is something you have to carefully look for in your own article or video news. So information, what kind of knowledge are you getting from your article, right? You can have the who, the what, the where, the how, the why, and the when, right? So this is really looking at the nature of information. What do you learn reading this sentence, this paragraph? And hopefully these pieces of information will help you understand the context and the development of the news. So let's go back to the article. And the first piece of information is about what? And it says, goats are playing a big role in controlling weeds. For me, this is subjective. There are no statistics on the number of goats being used for weed control in Japan. So how can the journalist say big role? Right? So for me, here we are missing the news background. And yes, the news background means what do you learn about what happened before the date of the article, right? So here we're not given any information that would help us understand this big aspect as well. So I actually did a little bit of research and found in the Japan Times of September 24th, 2014, there was an article by Amy Chavez. And in this article, we learned that the Japan railway system and Amazon Japan have indeed been using goats for weed control. But I don't think that I should have to look in another newspaper at another article to be able to really believe this big. So that's why for me it is subjective. The other piece of information that we get is why are they used, and it is said that they are not as noisy and do not require much attention. When I saw do not require much attention, I remembered something I had read about regarding goats being actually killed to be eaten. So I did some extra research, and again I found in another newspaper, the Asahi Shinbun, of February 25th, 2015, that two impoverished Vietnamese actually were sentenced, but it was suspended sentences to go to jail for 2 years or so, and it's because they did steal and ate goats, and those goats were used as a study to see the benefits of weeding using these type of animals in Gifu. So not much attention if this is going to create situations where poor people think it's a nice way for them to get food. I do believe the attention, some sort of attention is required. In the second paragraph, we also get two pieces of information, what and where. We learned that the Urban Renaissance Agency in Yokohama has been using goats in 3 Tokyo locations. The lots, once seen by a reporter, became spectacularly clean. So I believe it is rather objective, it states facts, but again, I think it's missing a little bit of support, especially because spectacularly clean is a very powerful expression. So I wish the journalist had given us an example to show how clean it is. So again, I looked into other articles about using goats, and I found that Lanny Laming, who has a MS in weed science from Colorado State University, so this is a powerful opinion, she explains that goats not only eat everything, but they also convert everything they eat into fertilizer, and that is their poo, which they trample, they step onto their poo, and so that the poo goes into the soil, and this leaves nothing behind. Had I been given that information by the journalist, I would have thought, yes, this is extremely clean indeed. Another aspect that you see here is this is just the opinion from the reporter, and this is another aspect that I hope you will be paying attention to when you read or watch, and it is connected to which opinions are you receiving, right? So who is this and what do they say? So the number of people quoted in an article is something to pay attention to. In my article, it's only the reporter. In the 3rd paragraph, you get the following pieces of information of what and when. So what, 6 goats, will be used to control weed in an area of about 7,000 square meters and will not be needed there in the fall or autumn as all the weeds there will be gone. So to me this sounds pretty objective, unless the part predicting the absence of weeds, so no weeds in the fall, can be challenged, right? So maybe there will be weeds in the fall. But besides that, I think it's a rather objective paragraph. Paragraph 4 touches on a topic that I personally find very important when you get new information, which is historical perspective, right? So historical perspective can be of 2 types. It can be related to the past or to the future. So if it's about the past, are you told of a similar situation that happened in the past, right? So is that helping you understand it? Hopefully, yes. For the future, are you told how the current situation might impact the future? So how what is happening now will change the future. In my article, it says that goats have traditionally played a key role on slopes and embankments of roads and a river. So the historical part here is the tradition, right? The fact that goats appear as a traditions. And I wondered when I saw that word and actually found that goats were introduced for the first time in 2010 in Kanazawa Prefecture. And to me, 5 years is not long enough to call this a tradition. So I think, again, the journalist is not being very objective, it's more subjective. Paragraphs 5 and 6 are pretty much objective. So in paragraph 5, I learned a bit more about how. So they compare mowers to goats, and they say that mowers are noisy and create waste, but goats eat the weeds, digest them, and excrete what they've digested. It doesn't emit a strong smell. So that's, if I had something to say, I would focus on the strong smell, because I know from experience that Goats themselves have a strong smell. So maybe their poo, their excrement doesn't smell bad, but male goats do have a very strong smell. And actually, if you do a quick search, again, in a Japanese newspaper, and this is dated 2013, it was a cafe owner who wanted to introduce pets into his cafe and decided not to get male pet goats because they smell so strong, and since he's making food that would not be fitting. So maybe the poo doesn't smell, but how about the goats themselves? Paragraph 6 says again, gives you again a bit of information about how the vacant lots are enclosed by fences and partitions, so separated by electric fences. A hut, water troughs, and a supply of salt are on site. They require only simple maintenance. So how, what kind of settings do the goats need to be able to live and eat the weed? So to me, it seems pretty factual, meaning it's just telling us what they need. But as an environmentalist, I kind of wonder about the costs of using an electric fence system, and also the cost of putting up and taking down such a system. So probably have to pay people to do this, and how much electricity does the fence system use, and how much does that cost? I hope this helps you understand what I want you to do for the analysis. In any case, I will be there in class to help you, but please pay careful attention to what I've explained here so that you can work quickly. Your analysis is due at the end of our next class. A few more words about your handout for the assignment. It has the contextualization, local and international. So this means that if the news is international and you are reading or watching a piece of news from Japan, what are you told about the importance of the news for Japan? And in my article, since the story takes place in Japan, the local contextualization is clear. But I think it would have been nice to learn if other countries have tried to use goats to control weeds, and this is never mentioned. So maybe this is too local. We need a little bit more of international context. And this is exactly what I say at the bottom here. If the news is connected to Japan, are you told anything about a similar situation outside of Japan? So take into consideration this last aspect of local contextualization. And again, to go back to the historical perspective, yes, the journalists used traditionally, but we saw that a 5-year tradition doesn't seem so much like a tradition. So again, remember to look for any information from the past. So for instance, in my case, about other ways to control weeds in an eco-friendly way. Or for the future, what does that mean for Japan? Does that mean that Japan is going to have goats everywhere? That could be a nice one to look forward to. So again, please read carefully the assignment worksheet so that you can understand what you will be doing. And remember to have your article or your video news ready for our next class so that you can analyze it. Thank you very much.